right, ladies and gentlemen, fellow decoders around the world. My name is Logan, Decode Your Reality. And today I bring on, and when I say a very special guest, I really, really mean that. I know we regurgitate this a lot when we bring guests on, but this man, his name is Athen. And I feel like this man here deserves a lot of recognition on the world stage when it comes to astrology because he is the founder and creator of the website called Mastering the Zodiac. The acronym is MTZ. And, I really am so grateful that you've allowed me to come on and share some space with you. So welcome out. I know my guests are excited to hear you speak, my friend.
Thank you so much, Logan. It's
Yeah.
great to be on.
Awesome. Awesome. So now that we get the little intro out of the way, I just want to jump right into this because I know we only have a short period of time. At what point in your career, well, actually, let me start with this. How did you get started in astrology?
Well, I was actually never into, I was like, I had an aunt that was into astrology and I always found it very intriguing. But I was like very left brain, person in a sense, very scientific. You had to really, prove things to me with the five senses in order for me to validate it and really make it part of my perspective on life. But, you know, through personal development, luckily I was always into personal development. I had a lot of challenges early in life. And so to overcome those challenges, I, practiced things like good diet, working out, and obviously that eventually led to meditation, as that's, sort of on that path of personal development. And at the time, I was living in a homestead just outside of Las Vegas in the desert, and really just spending so much time and alone and turning inwards, meditating so much. I just came to what you could call a spiritual awakening, where I became very aware that there's obviously so much more than the five senses, and there's so much more to life. And so from that moment on, I started to open my perspective to a lot more things and got into a lot of different spiritual sort of mediumships, tools. And but astrology was the one that stood out the most. And I think it's because I come from a very, again, kind of left brain perspective on things. And astrology really is one of the spiritual tools that is very physically verifiable. You can go outside and literally look at the planets and make, sort of interpretations of those observations. So I think that's why I gravitated towards it. It's really good for my personality, but it's obviously extremely powerful and was a super big help for me and, those close to me at the time. So I just started doing it personally. I started a YouTube channel, and one thing that led to the next, and it just built more momentum. And here we are today, about 12 years later, doing astrology full time, and really grateful to be having founded and being able to do this publicly.
Awesome. Did you, now yours obviously is based on sidereal. Did you start with tropical?
Yeah, so just like most astrologers, yeah. So through the studies, I heard about sidereal, and that's a quite common thing. Like if you ask a mainstream astrologer or tropical astrologer, they're going to say they know about sidereal. But just like so many things in life, it doesn't really hit you until it becomes part of some experience. And so I was doing tropical for a couple of years, and well, about a year actually. And then one day I was like, all right, let me go look at the sky for this full moon that was happening. It was supposed to be like a full moon in Gemini. So at the time, the smartphone apps just came out where you could like hold up the phone and see it visually with the planetarium. And it's supposed to be in Gemini, so I go out and check it, and sure enough, it's like right in the middle of Taurus. And that's when it really hit me, is when really visually and experientially I noticed like, wait a minute, something's not right here. So from that moment on, I've been slowly, for that, few months, I started to incorporate true sidereal. Luckily, there was a software out there that allows you to use the actual constellations, because believe it or not, like 99.5% of all astrology programs, all but like two, don't you, there's no setting where you can actually use the visual sky. So it's just really like really difficult thing to do. But luckily that was there. And so I was able to jump right in and start doing readings using the true placements. So Yeah, a lot of things had to come together. Part of it's me, but part of it's so much technology and so much is, humanity, I think, getting to a point now with pretty much in every industry, we're all going back to a more natural state now and a more, fundamental, healthy, balanced state after, I think, losing ourselves collectively in, primitive technology, this new technology since the Industrial Revolution. And yeah, it's just one of the many things here that I'm just, again, grateful to be a part of. And um, it's simple though. We're just using the visible sky, but now we have technology that allows us to do that and put it in a chart form
Yeah.
and all that, which is great.
Yeah. I was chuckling when you were describing how you found sidereal, and la this past year in June, I was on the beach, and I was looking up at the moon, and I saw it in Leo, in the body of Leo. So I had my other United States phone with me. I opened it up to take, because I wanted to take an image. I wanted to take a picture. So I was able to get the moon with the stars and the body of Leo, and then take a picture of the app with my phone. So I had two phones with me, and I did a video on that. And I showed people that tropical astrology fails miserably with the true placements of the celestials. And that was my proof that I needed, not just based upon, because a lot of people have, questions about these things being computer models, but just like you, I confirmed it with my own eyes, and I thought it was just amazing when I saw that. So,
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's something that, we just don't have the luxury of it anymore. It's with all these cities and noise pollution and living in these boxes, it's like we've completely separated ourselves from nature. But, our ancestors, literally every night, they're sitting there with no light pollution, looking up at this freaking vast sky of stars and the Milky Way and all this stuff, and they're just immersed in this stuff every night,
yeah,
telling stories about these moving bodies and stuff. And so, yeah, I think it's so important to go back to those roots.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I mean, your birthday is not too far from mine, and we share that sun in Capricorn, which is, I mean, that says a lot about you. What do you kind of look towards when you do astrology readings? What things stand out to you? Do you get into the chart rulers, the Atman Karkarka, which Vedic astrology uses the highest degree? Do you use any of that kind of stuff?
I use some Vedic principles. So I am, strictly a Western astrologer, practiced and learned from the Western background, but I do incorporate a lot of principles with from Vedic. But I go by lately. I've been really using the nodes a lot, so Rahu and Ketu in Vedic astrology, and yeah, the rulers associated with those, and really reading the whole chart from that sort of perspective. The more I do astrology now, the more I try to make it as practical as possible for people. So, it's nice to like go in and like hear your personality characteristics and things like this. And I do have a printout of this, which is like, you know, you know, 12 pages of like a report of describing all this stuff. But when I do these one-on-one readings, I really like to get into, okay, how can we make how can we align your life to your life path? Like how can we align you to your life path? Because what I find is if we're off of our path, I can't tell you how many readings I've done, and someone's coming to me and they're having problems, they're having issues, they feel stuck in their life, and it's because they're misaligned to their notes, they're misaligned to their life path as it's read in the chart. And then those that are very fulfilling, it's like, okay, they tell me about it, it's like, all right, well, you're obviously living, and I can see it in the chart, you're living in alignment to the path. So there's a lot of this free will that is involved, obviously. Like, again, coming from a more Western background, the West tends to give a lot more in terms of free will than like the East or Vedic astrology does. So that's how I like to approach it is, okay, let's see how you are in alignment with your path. Tell me a little bit about your background, maybe what's on your mind at the moment, what are you involved with, and let's see how that fits with the life path. Because I guarantee you, if you're feeling stuck or uncertain in any way, or really, suffering in any way, it's because, you're off of that path. And then the chart tells us very clearly how to align to it. And then that's just amazing for me because, it's the most rewarding thing when someone, goes to the reading, they get that confirmation because everyone knows what their life path is deep down. It's not like I'm telling anyone anything they don't already know, but there's so much noise in life, external and internal noise. And it's so rewarding to have them get that confirmation and then never needing me again. Like my job is to give the one reading, and if I've done my job correctly, you shouldn't need any more readings after that, because it really is that simple.
Yeah.
We are the whole zodiac, and I think in a spiritual level, it's important to incorporate the whole zodiac. But in this physical incarnation, as the Vedics say, this kind of resolving of karma, if you will, or living our dharma, aligning with our dharma.
Yeah.
The chart's very clear about this, and that's what I love the most. That's how I like to work with the astrology, is how to align, with the dharma.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am here with Athen and Mastering the Zodiac. And what I love about your system the most is, besides the true sizes of the constellations, I think you did a great job incorporating, like Virgo. If you look at it, it's much bigger than Cancer or Libra, right? So I think you did an amazing job with that. How long did it take you to get that website up and running and get a coder to do all that kind of stuff?
Well, that was years. Yeah, that was years in the making. I mean, at
Yes.
first it just started with, um, well, the like I said, that program that makes all this possible, Prometheus is the name. Um, I would embed the luckily the developer Gavin had a chart calculator that I could embed on the website. So I was doing that for a while, like I don't know, 5 years or something. And then slowly we were able to start to incorporate, the actual calculator we have now, which is more, let's say, responsive. But the boundaries were pretty quick. I mean, the boundaries are very simple. So all I did was, and this unfortunately was, revolutionary. I mean, I was the one in 2012 to do this, because I would have expected something like this to happen a lot sooner. But anyways, there was no one doing it. So I took the constellations, and there's a beginning and ending star of each constellation, right? So let's say we'll take the beginning zodiac. You have the end of Pisces, the last star of Pisces, then you have the first star of Aries. And there's always either a gap, or the two constellations will overlap. So I just took the two, I plotted them on the ecliptic. So I'm basically just using the longitudinal coordinates of those stars, plotted them on the ecliptic, and just took the midpoint, the halfway points between the two, and said, okay, this is the boundary. So I call it it's just simply taking the halfway point between the last and first stars of the constellations. So yeah, so that part was very simple, and it's extremely accurate, because it's how it appears visually. Now, there was, already some boundaries out there, and a lot of maybe your listeners are aware, but the IAU, or International Astronomical Union, has their own set of boundaries. And that's, also uneven constellations, what they call the astronomical ones. But the issue with that is it doesn't reference the ecliptic. And that's why I had to do the midpoint system, because the Astronomical Union is not concerned with astrology, right? They're not trying to make the constellations relative to the path of the planets, the ecliptic. So what we need with astrology is that path of the planets, to reference that when we make the boundaries. And that's why the IAU boundaries can be off, sometimes quite off from the system I use, because, to be honest, I don't even know how they came up with these boxes. So they basically drew boxes around not just the zodiac, but like all the constellations.
Wow.
And it seems arbitrary the way they decided to do it. It's almost like just someone went in there and freehanded it.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, so those boundaries are different. That's why we had to create these. And yeah, it's the midpoint system. I think it's the best to be used visually. But of course, there's going to be more in the future, and I, recommend anyone else, use different ones. We're thinking about using maybe the magnitude of the stars to determine more of the boundaries, maybe using the distance from the ecliptic, also factoring it in. So there's a lot of different ways that it can evolve. But right now it is very simple, but I think simple in a good way, that it's, like I said, it's very accurate to the visual sky.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, I think you did a great job on it. You said it's called, the program is Prometheus. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's the astrology software.
Your name in numerology is the same numerology as Prometheus. Prometheus in
really?
numerology is 48, and that's what your name is in Chaldean numerology, 48.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's
I didn't
amazing.
know
Yeah.
that.
So of course Prometheus stealing the fire, astrology,
Yeah.
one of them, the knowledge. That's awesome. What we know, the other thing I love about your, my probably my favorite thing, because the sizes those are already a gimme in my book. But what I love about it is it's color coded. And I absolutely love that because when I'm doing a reading for somebody and I got my cursor out, it's so easy to show them and have them follow along with what's in the house and where the zodiac sign is and the lord of that house. It just makes it so much easier for the reader, for a practitioner of astrology to show people and have them follow along. I just love that feature. So kudos and great job on that. Well, how did you
Oh,
determine?
thank
What
you.
did you determine to do that? The color coding and all that.
No, that was actually one of the preset options in Prometheus was rainbow, and
Ah,
I just like it too. I love it, but it's basically just going through the the infrared to ultraviolet spectrum, red to purple overlaid on top of the zodiac. Yeah, but it is, and this just proves the point that like astrology is basically just the cycle of life, and this cycle of life is repeated everywhere, and like you just pointed out, it's also repeated in the color spectrum. And you have the densest red, the heaviest, or the chakra system, right? You got the red and then the ultraviolet. So these patterns are all repeated, and it's just uncanny how you can always overlay a system on top of another like this and it fits, if it's a system that is natural. With nature, we just keep seeing those repeating patterns and it fits. And the color spectrum to the zodiac is one of them. Yeah.
right, right. Um, the other thing too is Ophiuchus, including Ophiuchus in there, which it's well deserved. I was just talking to my audience. I just did a decode presentation on Lionsgate, and August 8th, and I was talking to them about how Ophiuchus deserves to be on that round table because of the foot, and it's 51 Ophiuchi, as you know, that goes because it's like most astrologers. Well, if it's not on the ecliptic, well, Ophiuchi has its foot going over, and 51 Ophiuchi puts it over the ecliptic. Was that like already something you were going to include when you created this program?
Well, I didn't, you mean when I created the boundaries?
Yeah, well, yeah,
Because
exactly. Were you just already intending to include Ophiuchus with the other 12?
yeah, it was. So, I mean, it's hard not to use a Fucus when you're using the visible sky, right? Because it's a very obvious constellation.
Yeah.
So the only alternative is to, yeah, just ignore it and expand Scorpio. But that is something that tropical does, mainstream astrology does. But when you look at the stars, I mean, there is no confusion. I mean, Scorpio does wrap underneath. And what's crazy is that they do share the exact same amount of space, right? So you have above Scorpio's a Fucus, and a Fucus takes up, this amount of space, and a Scorpio takes up almost exactly the same amount. And they're just crossing the ecliptic at different times. So this is why I don't use like say 13 houses, right? So houses, your audience probably knows, but houses. In astrology just are basically taking the number of zodiac signs but saying, okay, we're going to divide up the sky, not the constellations but the actual sky, starting with the eastern horizon, by the same number of zodiac signs, which is traditionally 12. So a lot of people ask me, okay, well, if you're using a Fucus, which is the 13th sign, why aren't you using 13 houses then? Well, the reason is because the Fucus and Scorpio do share the same part of the sky, so they are the only dual sign that we use. And I do again understand why it was removed, because at the time, mainstream, the tropical, so the Greeks basically, and well, the Babylonians, pre-Babylonians prior to that, they were really intending on making calendars and clocks. And it's like, imagine a clock, with 13 hours. It doesn't work. So obviously, to them it makes, and they were using a Fucus. The pre-Babylonians were using a Fucus. We do have a lot of records of the same in Egypt as well. They were using a Fucus. But anyway, so they remove it, and they just make it Scorpio. It makes sense because it shares the same part of the sky as Scorpio. But yeah, if you look at it visually, there's a very, very clear part where Scorpio passes above the ecliptic from the bottom. Like you said, the leg of a Fucus passes from the top down across the ecliptic. Actually, so by definition, a zodiac sign is a constellation that passes through the ecliptic. By definition, it's there. And these are similar energies. They're both about depth and transformation.
Yeah.
But they are the, what we would say is this, again, evolution of life. It is the next stage of evolution. After Scorpio's getting into the deeper world, a Fucus then works with that deeper world. And you can do this for any sign too. The beginning of Leo is very different from the end of Leo, right? But it's a very clear difference when you're dealing with these two. And not to mention too that the Milky Way, the center of our galaxy. So
Right there.
that very thick Milky Way band, that center of our galaxy passes right through the end of a Fucus.
Yep.
And so when a planet passes over and finishes a Fucus, at the end of a Fucus is that final death, transformation, and then Sagittarius, the free spirit, emerges out of that. So reading Scorpio without that very, deeper transformative part of the sky is just not doing service to the sky.
Yep. And even that's a great point with the Milky Way there, because that's like Vishnu's area right there. Like the belly button. I think it's the belly button of Vishnu, right? Is that area right there. Yeah.
I'm not sure, but yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's the belly button, but that's Vishnu's domain is right there, which makes sense because of Ophiuchus and, holding that serpent and carrying that load and whatnot. So when you do a reading and someone has a placement in Ophiuchus, are you describing that similar to the Scorpio energy characteristics?
Well, no, it's a step above that Scorpio, right? So the Scorpio energy, I read it as, let's say we're talking about sun sign. So a sun in Scorpio would be someone who's aware of the deeper world. So they are into research, they're into the occult, they're into, working with that deeper world, psychology, whatever. And but a Fucus is, again, the higher octave of that. It's the higher expression of that. So not only is a Fucus aware of it, but a Fucus wants to work with it. So when you're dealing with like an Ophiuchus sun, you have someone who's not only aware of the deeper world, but actually starts to come up with insights and a perspective of like, hey, how can we actually work with this deeper world? So that's why, it's the archetype. Well, it's a serpent bearer, but it's been, the serpent in ancient history has been always associated with healing.
Yeah.
So it really is that healer. And if we look at, modern psychology, like Jungian psychology, we can very clearly see that, if you want to heal, you have to really not only be aware of the deeper world, but you have to embrace it. Yeah. And I think this is what Ophiuchus do, and I think this is what's symbolic in the constellation itself, is that this isn't a person fighting the serpent, right? This isn't like Western Middle Age Europe where we hear about the dragon and slaying the dragon. This is someone who's actually, and the serpent has been synonymous with the ego, or the physical aspects of the self, or the physical body, which is all the same, right? The ego, the physical self, and all this. And you can either fight that, you can work, you can resist it, you can overcome it. Sure, these are all empowering things, but Ophiuchus shows us that actually the key is to embrace the serpent within us, right? To embrace the ego, to embrace those darker, hidden, exiled parts of ourselves that we've exiled, and embrace that and accept that. And that's what I think Jung was talking about when he talked about integrating the ego and becoming more whole, because in our unconscious we have all these parts of ourselves that we've exiled, right? We've said that's not me, because as soon as the ego comes in and says I'm this way, I like this, I identify with this, that's basically implying that it's not everything else. And all those everything else's go into the unconscious. And I think that's what the galactic center is. I think that's what Ophiuchus is aware of. And the opportunity now, not every Ophiuchus will do this, but the great opportunity that Ophiuchus has is the ability and the opportunity to embrace these exiled parts of themselves, but of life and of others. And then, when they start doing it for others, that's where you do start to see, people getting into the medical field, people being psychologists, people being in the spiritual and the occult, or sharing knowledge about this stuff. But that is that next stage. And I'm not saying Scorpios can't do this, but Scorpios, are much better at research and much better at uncovering that deeper world. And then you have people like doctors or, like I said, spiritual teachers and things like that tend to have more Ophiuchus placements.
Right, right. It's really interesting with the 13 because I don't know, I'm sure you've connected this, but Leonardo da Vinci's painting The Last Supper, there's not 12 people at the table, there's 13 people at the table. And, is Jesus the Christ? Was he initiated in that painting to be Ophiuchus? That's the big question. The sun makes this boomerang shape. It makes a serpent shape as it moves through the 12 months, and it actually has to be 13 months to make it a perfect boomerang. But it's interesting because the Julian calendar, so history says, is when they moved January and February in front of March, and March used to be month number one, but December seems to be like the farthest away point, and this is, I think, where Christmas may come into play. And that's in Sagittarius at that time. So it's right around, I think, when would you say Ophiuchus, what do you have it pegged as the start day? Like it's going to have what the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th of December when you actually would be an Ophiuchus sun?
Well, so if you do take that, so this is where we have an overlap with the midpoints, right? So you want to take the nearest star to the ecliptic, the last one of Scorpio, and then you want to take the first one, which is the leg of Ophiuchus, and then draw that midpoint. So if you do that, then the sun enters Ophiuchus on December 7th.
Oh, 7th, okay.
And stays there until the 18th. And then the 18th, the sun has just passed the galactic center, and then then is halfway between Ophiuchus and Sagittarius, and then starts to get closer to Sagittarius on December 19th, right? But you bring up like an excellent point about the sort of solstices, and this is that we are going through these ages, and I say pretty soon, but we're talking still hundreds of years. But in a humanity sense, we're going to have the solstice aligning with the galactic center. So in other words, when it is, let's say Christmas, it is going to be, or let's say the solstice, when it is the solstice, it is going to be the sun in the galactic center in Ophiuchus. So this is going to be obviously a change of ages. We hear about the age of Aquarius that we're in, but this is very significant once we do make that transition, because and this is why tropical is different from sidereal, is that with tropical you stay fixed with the seasons, right? And that's why in tropical, when you do get to the solstice, you're dealing with Capricorn, and it stays this way indefinitely, right? That's why you have always on the spring equinox it starts their Aries.
Yep.
But there's that change, what's called precession, and it is the movement of the sun relative, well, it's all of us really, but the way we observe it, the sun relative to the constellations.
Yep.
And this is changing. And so right now during the spring equinox, it's actually Pisces, not Aries. And like you said, during the solstice, it's Sagittarius and not Capricorn, but soon to be Ophiuchus. And that's going to be a very interesting time.
Yeah. So do you have any like have you looked that far, like into the future of when you think it's going to hit Ophiuchus, the solstice?
I did the research, and now I just don't have the information in front of me. So what I'll do is after our call, I'll send it to you, and then maybe you can make an annotation or note on exactly when that will be. But we're still a ways away. Like it's not going to happen in our lifetime or anything.
Yeah, of course
that.
not.
But I think it's going to be very significant, like collectively. When you think about how the center of the Milky Way, literally the center of the Milky, because we're in a way not orbiting, but we're rotating around the center of the Milky Way. And so the galactic center, this Milky Way band, is basically the galactic sun, Yeah. And we know how important the sun is. We're rotating around the sun in the solar system, but we are all, including the sun, rotating around the center of the galaxy, this larger system. And that's the Fucus. That's the galactic center. That is the star. That's the massive black hole in the center of the Milky Way that we're all orbiting around. And it's very transformative.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's in the head. What Rasselhag is the head of Ophiuchus, which is, I think, is pretty amazing. that whole, I kind of broke all that down before, and I tell you, it's very eye-opening when you start to study the individual stars, especially again with 51. That number 51 is so magical. I mean, the Great Pyramid of Giza has a 51-degree slope. Why does it have a 51-degree slope? Did they know something we didn't know? Why, I mean, is there any synchronicity with this 51 Ophiuchi star that goes over the ecliptic that makes Ophiuchus part of the round table, if you will? I just very fascinating with the numbers and you synchronize them. Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, I'll pay more attention to 51. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, 13, that's another huge one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, again, one of the greatest things I've ever discovered is I found it online. Somebody had taken an image of the sun, either rising or setting on the same day of every month. And when I put them all together, it made this boomerang shape. It made like the sun does the sidewinder, right? Which of course that's what it does. It's like a pendulum. And so but you can't just go 12 months. You have to add on the same month that it started with, which is December. So in order to get this beautiful sidewinder pattern, it has to be 13 months. And Leonardo da Vinci's painting, the mastery of that painting and what it means just based upon the solar positions matches up exactly with that 13-month calendar. And we also can take into the 13-month 28-day calendar as well. And when you do that, you have the month of Soul, which is kind of the highlight of the Tropic of Cancer, because now you have the sun at its maximum position during the summertime, or at least the starting point of that. So yeah,
interesting.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, but the 13 lunar months, that's what you mean, right? So there's 13 months in the year, right?
Yep. Another thing that I found was where I love the whole app that you're doing was the discovery of Uranus in 1781. And when I did that, I looked at that. I was comparing sidereal versus tropical, and tropical failed miserably again. I've already told my audience that they have the discovery of Uranus all the way over at the end of Gemini. And when you read the journal of William Herschel, who discovered it, he said specifically that I'm observing this thing near Zeta Tauri, which is Taurus, right? And so when you look at that, you can see how the sidereal gives the true accuracy of the placement of what that was. And have you ever looked into any of the discoveries, Neptune and Uranus and all that? No?
Well, and I know when they were discovered, and as an astrologer, we know that whatever was going on collectively at the time of a planet's discovery tells you the most you can know about a planet, which is so valuable, because there's so much, with these newer planets, there's no like ancient knowledge. Like I can get tons of ancient knowledge on Saturn and everything before that. But then once we get to these modern planets, we really have to trust, if we're going to trust, but I say don't trust, let's verify. And so the way to really verify is, what was going on collectively when this planet was discovered, and that's going to tell us the most about that planet. So for example, like 1781 with Uranus, the US was going through revolution, and then the whole world started going through revolution, right? And there was innovation, there was technology, it's coming out of that age of enlightenment. So this is all Uranus energy, right? And this is why Uranus is associated with revolution, and it's why it's associated with innovation and all this collective stuff. And that's the energy we need to be focused on. So when we have, Uranus doing something and we're all trying to understand what's going to happen collectively, we really need to, study history and see, okay, what happened during these times when Uranus, in this case, very modern times, that Uranus did these things, and we only have so much to work with. But yeah, the time of discovery is really important. And you said that Uranus was in sidereal Taurus then when it was discovered, because I didn't know that. So that means
and Uranus is in Taurus right now again. So
right, that's what we're gonna say. Yeah, so interesting, because it's like we're having Uranus's birth year or whenever exactly is. I'll have to look into that. But and then that tells us even more about Uranus too. That there's something there about Taurus, because Taurus is the Earth, and we're from Earth discovering Uranus. Uranus is revolutionizing the Earth. There's probably a lot of synchronicities we can associate with that. But that's a really good point about what sign Taurus Uranus was in when it was discovered.
Yeah. No, I try to tell people, I'm not trying to twist anybody's arms or change their minds. I'm about precision, and that's what I love about Mastering the Zodiac. And I got to be honest, Athen, I fought your website off. I had somebody bring it to me, and I just wasn't having it at first. And at this, I was using Tropical at the same time as I was using Sidereal. When I do readings, I was doing both charts side by side, and I just was so embedded in the Sidereal, and I was really big into the nakshatras. So I really didn't want to deviate away from that system at the time. So I fought it tooth and nail. And then finally one day I just realized, wait a minute, Virgo, it was Virgo that did it for me. I'm like, wait a minute, Virgo's so big. Like, it's not the same size as Aries or Cancer. So how can that be accurate? And that's when I really moved over into the Mastering the Zodiac. So once again, I'm very grateful. And I know my community that listens to, what I'm suggesting, they're very grateful for you as well.
Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah. Yeah. I put a lot of work into this, and very rewarding to hear when it pays back like that.
Now, are you going to be adding the nakshatras to your Mastering the Zodiac, or have you ever plan on doing that?
Actually, did a little bit of research on this. There's people in the community that done some research, to test it and everything. And I don't see any reason to be honest, because I think the Vedic have done an amazing job, obviously. Don't even need to say that. They've done an amazing job staying true to the sky. Now, obviously they're using an even 30 degrees for all the signs, okay? But I don't really see a problem with that if you are going to be using the nakshatras and the padas. Because once you drill into those nakshatras and padas, you'll see that they're corresponding to the actual stars of that part of the sky. So, like for example, like the late degrees of Cancer in their system is actually Leo. Okay, so they'll say something is Cancer, but it's actually Leo. Okay, according to the sign. But if you look at the nakshatras, so if you look at that late part of Cancer, you'll see how much that actually describes that Leo quality. So I think the Vedic system is perfectly fine the way that it is. Leave it intact. If you want to use nakshatras, great. But keep it within that system, because there's really no reason to change it, because it already uses the stars and it's already corresponding to the visual sky. Right. If you use it that far, the only thing I would advocate is if you're going to use Vedic, make sure you use the nakshatras and padas, because of course, you could simplify it and only look at the signs that are the 30 degrees each. And you'll miss out so much, obviously, because then you're not using that true sidereal anymore. But with the nakshatras and padas, it is true sidereal, and it stayed true to the sky. So I think every system should be used for what it's intended for. And I think, Hindu astrology is 100% accurate in what it's intended to be used for.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this question. Why do you think so many people stand by Tropical and they feel it is accurate for them, and they'll back that up with the definitions and whatnot? Why do you think that is for people that use this?
Well, I still think Tropical is accurate for its intended purpose, right? So, as you know, with astrology, I mean, we create charts of charts all the time. What I like to call derivative charts. Okay, so like the progressed chart, for example, is a derivative chart, and it's extremely accurate, and I use it, and almost every astrologer uses it. And even though it's not the sky when you were born, and it's not the sky today, which would be the natal chart and transits, it's still accurate. And it's because, there's nothing wrong with taking the original chart, and then if you want to look at something from a particular perspective, you create that derivative. And that's what I think Tropical is. I think Tropical is just a derivative. And again, not to bash it, I don't mean derivative is bad. I just mean, like, let's be honest. Like, okay, I think even a tropical astrologer would agree that the tropical zodiac was derived from the sky. Okay, so we have the sky, which is true sidereal, and we have this derivative, which is tropical. But that doesn't mean it's any less accurate. Okay, so it's basically overlaid the zodiac on top of the seasons. And it's now using that cycle of life, which is independent of astrology. It's just the cycle of life. They've overlaid it on top of the seasons, and they've created a system around that. So it's still very accurate. It's especially accurate for the sun sign. It's especially accurate for the tropical ascendant, which tends to show very much the sort of persona or mask we wear in the world. But what it's showing that very physical 3D part of the self. So that's why I prefer to use true sidereal, because I see it as the fundamental self, but we have infinite selves. And the tropical self, I think, is showing what maybe the Hindus might call the sort of karmic self, or the self that's here. Let's say, I don't know what better word to use. I'm not trying to degrade tropical, but kind of stuck in this 3D world. Because again, tropical does not change. It is static. And like, even if the Earth was to cease existing, the tropical system would go on, right? It's this man-made system. It's based on the seasons, locked into that consistent seasonal thing that never changes. And that is the karmic reality that we're living in. So, or the physical reality, and so that's what I think it shows. And I think it does an excellent job of showing the physical self and the physical experiences for like a yearly reading or horoscope or anything like that too. But we just have to be very clear of what we're using it for. All right. So just know when you're using tropical, and there's nothing wrong with this, but just when you're doing it, you are looking at that more physical self. And I think, we're all going through different stages of development. And I'm not trying to say that true siderealists are more evolved than tropicalists or anything like that. But, there is a stage. And I think at some points when everyone's ready, the next stage is, I think, to go back to some sort of fundamental root. And I'm not saying it's my system, but I am saying it is the sky. I'm trying to get as close to the sky as possible. But, it's important to learn about our physical selves. But if we want to grow, we're going to have to start tearing down these layers and starting to go into the more non-physical, or let's say essential self, which is the physical, which is the visible sky. So tropical is great. You want to know more about your physical life, your physical self, your ego. It's great at that, and it's extremely accurate at that. But if and when you're ready, whoever's listening, if don't force it. That's why I don't preach this. I'm not trying to convert anybody, right? I just express what I feel like is, the truth. And when it's ready for someone, it's there. And maybe for some of you listening right now, maybe you're at that kind of transitional period. Check it out. Check True Sidereal. If it doesn't resonate and you're like, this is, horse crap, I'm going to stick with tropical, then stick with tropical. Yep. I think at some point you will veer out into some form of sidereal at some point. But right now, do your tropical. It's accurate. It works. Keep using it. There's no need to force anything, or no need to convince anyone, no need to change anything if it's already working for you. And trust me, there's tons of value that we get from a tropical chart, and just simply learning more about yourself in any form, is valuable. And I think tropical still does an excellent job at that.
Yeah, no, that's a amazing explanation as to the tropical. I'm pretty raw and visceral on my take on everything, and that's because of, like as I mentioned earlier, I'm about precision, and this is why I gravitated over to your website. And I think, moving into the age of Aquarius, if we're already there now, it's I know thyself, and the water being poured out. I think that you're right. I think that we're going to come back to a state of like, okay, what's the foundation? What's the origin? What's the true layer of the beginning of how all this stuff works to the map of the stars. And I think that's why people are, I think your website really is a pivotal moment for me and so many other people, because when you start to look at the true sidereal and you compare that to the tropical, as you said, tropical has its merit, it has its say in our reality, but are you looking for the precision? If you're looking for the precision, then you come over to your website, Mastering the Zodiac, and you look at the true sidereal, and you'll get this, and you'll get a contrast between what you're used to and what may kind of, and I had to adjust to this, because my placements moved. You had mentioned the physicality, the tropical showing the physicality, and I agree with that. But I also look at the sidereal with the physicality. And what is your rising sign, Athen?
And true sidereal is Taurus.
Taurus.
So yeah. So in true sidereal, it's read totally differently. It's read as not what you're born with, but who you're destined to become. So I don't have any planets in Taurus. I don't think anyone would see that I'm a Taurus in any capacity. And this is a great example of how the rising sign is so different. So the ancients would look when someone was born, and based on what sign was rising when they were born, that was supposed to be what role they were going to play in society. So this is read totally different, like I said, than the tropical, which is like, okay, this is your physical appearance, this is how others see you. This is more of what life's helping you develop. So when I was born, I had no Taurus energy in my life, but as my life has developed, my life has put me more and more into Taurus situations, to become more self-reliant, to become more resourceful, to, believe in myself more. These are things that through these experiences, I am becoming more of a Taurus, but I'm sure you would agree, and as well as anyone else who knows me, I'm not a Taurus, but I'm learning to become a Taurus. I'm becoming a Taurus, and I will become a more steady, grounded, resourceful person, a Taurus person as time goes by, but not because I was born with this energy, but because life is helping me develop it, helping me shape that. And that's because it's not a planet. It's just the constellation rising. The planets, like you said, in true sidereal, the planets aren't physical, even in true sidereal, because we see them visually, everything up to Saturn, very physical. Yeah, the rising sign is a great example of how it's very different.
Yeah. So you would be, what's your rising in tropical then?
So Gemini, which you can see.
Okay,
Here I am talking with my hands and
yeah.
See, so like most people could see that I'm like appearing as a Gemini, communicating, talking, language, all this stuff, and that's why it's still accurate. But I can tell you the Taurus thing is personally very meaningful, very important to me, and I think everyone else who checks out their true sidereal rising sign.
I can see that. I mean, I can see the Gemini and then the Capricorn sun. I can see the earthy, I can see all that kind of stuff in you. There's a really good book called Faces of the Zodiac? I think so. Faces of the Zodiac, and it goes through, and that guy uses tropical astrology to do his bidding on what people look like. I had a question for you. I lost my train of thought now. Just escaped my mind. I had a good question for you and I forgot what it was. Okay. Where's your Venus at?
So my Mars and Venus are in Aquarius. So that's then
so the rising
start to
sign,
run into that. Yeah.
Yeah, you have Aquarius. So this also plays into the sidereal because Venus is ruling Taurus, and Taurus, your Venus is in Aquarius, and you have the traits of Aquarius. I mean, listen, I don't know if you get into the playing cards, but every birthday has a playing card attached to it, and this is the January 29th playing card. By the way, you share the birthday of Tony Robbins, which is a really big deal. This card right here is like the Swiss Army knife of the entire deck. I already know you're a genius, and I know you're one of your gifts is intelligence, because this is the knight on the chessboard, and they go into battle to do things. And it's not just that card right there. You have your pair of cards. You have two jacks. You actually have a jack of diamonds, and the jack of diamonds is tied to the eye in the sky, right? So this is out of the entire card system, which is tied right to astrology. This is the strongest hand out of any birthday. So if you have a Jack of Clubs birthday, you have a Jack of Diamonds spirit card, as they call it, and that's what you got. And when you told me that before we started and I looked it up, I said, oh, this totally makes sense of why you've revolutionized the astrology world with your Mastering the Zodiac. So again, I'm so grateful. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'll check that out. So the Jack of Diamonds comes automatically with the Jack of Clubs?
Yeah, it's your spirit card. Yeah. So in the Babylonian card system, you have the life spread and the spirit spread, and those go hand in hand. And the majority of people have two different cards. And so your Jack of Clubs card is paired with the Jack of Diamonds, and there isn't any other hand out there. Nobody has a pair of anything other than what you got, right? And again, I mean, if I just look at Tony Robbins, look at what that guy's done for the world, right? Tony Robbins, I mean, he fits this right here to a T. The Jack of Diamonds being tied to the sun, the eye in the sky, and the Jack of Clubs is the knight that goes. And this is a mental card. This is I think, right? This is the club suit in the card system is an air suit, so it's you do a lot of thinking, obviously, right? And then you pair that with the astrological, and you place these cards over, and these sit in the house of Aquarius. So you have your Venus and Mars in Aquarius. Well, tied to your rising sign with Taurus, starts to make sense. I mean, that fusion of masculine, feminine energy paired with your cards, I mean, you're a gem. You're a gem. I mean, if I were reading for you, man, I would be like a kid in a candy store, because I get to see a superstar, because that's what you are. Yeah. And this is the first time I've met you. So, I mean, I'm not blowing smoke. I just tell it like it is, man.
Thanks, Logan.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
welcome.
that's
Do you
great
have
to hear.
anything in Ophiuchus?
No, but it's my setting, right? So the part of Taurus that's rising is setting of Fucus. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, so the setting, the descendant is where we come from. So it's not like our roots like the bottom of the chart, but it's kind of like the experiences that we've kind of come from and who are moving from and then into. So I'm coming from that Fucus world and moving into the Taurus. And that's how I feel about it. It's like we never want to uproot ourselves from our roots. Our roots are always very important. And I feel like I'll always have those roots in that deeper world. But in terms of my conscious intention, like I am always moving it more into that physical. And like even now, like Spain, and for the first time in like so long, I have a garden, and I'm like the
Oh,
kid in the
cool.
candy shop with this garden, man, because I just love the nature and I
Earth,
love
baby,
going out there
Taurus.
with no, yeah, exactly. Uh, so yeah, so I'll always have my roots in that, obviously with astrology and stuff like this. But I try to move it and again, make it as practical and grounded as possible for people, and I think that's how I approach the astrology. So.
That's awesome. Do you ever look at the D9 Navamsha? Do you fool around with the Vedic a little bit and look at the Navamsha chart?
I have, but I don't do it, professionally at this point. Yeah, because I find it gets overwhelming, right? Like that's why I was saying like using the Vedic with the Vedic system in its system, intact with the way that it is seems the best way of working with it. I find the information I need from the standard charts, or the Western charts, progress chart. There's a lot of similarities, obviously, and a lot of overlap there. But yeah, I just keep it simple. But not to say I don't think that the divisional charts are not helpful or not accurate. They absolutely are. It's just, again, sort of in that Hindu system.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, D6, D60. I mean, there's so many, it gets kind of ridiculous. So I concur with you on that. I do like the Navamsha chart, though. I think it's pretty awesome for the rising in the second half of your life, as they describe it, partnerships and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. So what are your future plans for Mastering the Zodiac from here on out? Do you plan on expanding it? I know you do readings, so do you teach classes? What's your expansion looking like, if any?
Yeah, so it's pretty much maxed out in terms of mine, like me as a product, let's say. So I have my readings, I have my courses, all the videos. And then just the last year, I've created, like I was saying, the reports. And for me, that's a big achievement because now I'm able to start to, produce this stuff on a larger scale because there's only so many readings I can do in a day and only so much content I can make. So yeah, we've got the reports now, which is a printout of all the signs and true sidereal. And you haven't gotten yours, right, Logan? So I'll send you yours after today. You can
Thank you.
check
Yeah,
yours out. Yeah.
appreciate that.
But anyways, 12 pages, got a mini report on it. It's actually extremely accurate, very helpful. So right now, gonna probably start to pivot into I'm still deciding if I want to do a future report, which would be like the upcoming year report, or to just go straight into an app. So I'm leaning more towards an app right now, which I think would be really cool. And I haven't actually said anything, so your audience is the first to hear about
Oh,
this. But
thanks for
I think
telling
I'm
us
gonna
and dropping the bomb. I love it.
yeah, so I think I'm going to pivot in that app direction because there you'll be able to see not only like the next year, but I plan on having it so like like most apps you can see what's happening in the week and all that. But of course it'll be in true sidereal, so of course I believe it's going to be extremely helpful, extremely accurate. But of course I have a lot of other ideas too, like incorporating a little chat system with a kind of maybe AI or something like this to produce more content in a way that's digestible and understandable. So yeah, so I think that's the direction I'm going to take next. But most recently, I've got that report, and I recommend everyone, just go to the website and just type in your birth details and see if it resonates. Because there's a free mini report there. You can see the sky when you were born. It's all there visually too. I don't know if you saw, but I've also just recently added like the visual sky where you can see the actual
Yeah. When you can
planetary
scroll
positions,
across.
which
Yeah.
is
Yeah. That's awesome.
yeah. Yeah, so that's a big one for us. But yeah, you can see it visually and get the mini report, see if it resonates, and if it does, I can give your audience a discount, 50% discount on the full report. Just going to masteringthezodiac.com / report dash discount. That's report dash discount. I
Oh,
can
that's
send you
nice
the
of you.
link.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate that. That's great. Well, it's been so much fun. I have one last question for you. I don't think I asked you this, and if I'm repeating it, I apologize. When did you When did you know that astrology was going to be something that was a part of your life? Like, were you young? Were you in your mid, like where were you at in life for you to kind of get involved with astrology, or did something else set you in motion of it?
It's really weird because, like, in a way, I could say like I've known about it since a young age, but again, like astrology only crossed my path occasionally throughout my life up until, like I said, my spiritual awakening. Like, so always really interested in it with my aunts. My aunts always played a very synchronistic and very, I would say, spiritual like role in my life and how things came together and the interests. And she taught me like drawing and all these things that I wasn't exposed to. She kind of like helped me like mold myself and learn more about my interests and things. So I could say as far back as like probably being introduced with my aunt with a book. She had like this, it was cool, man. I don't even know if, I mean, I'm sure the book exists somewhere, but it was like this really fat book. It wasn't all just like textbook stuff. It was all visual with all the signs, and like it was like this many pages on each sign, all visual with all the planets and everything, with all the signs and everything. But anyways, that was really cool as a kid, and yeah, so into that. But what really hit me, I think, when obviously I saw just the YouTube response, and started doing it professionally, and then I moved away from my other job, and at that point I was like, all right, great, like I get to do something that I love now. And it's hard work. I've been working way more than I would at my other job, but it's rewarding. I love it. But it was really when I think it was really when I could make that leap financially and start supporting myself doing this, that I think it really hit me.
Oh, that's beautiful. So your aunt she was into astrology and the mystical arts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, she was always into the occult and the esoteric. Interestingly too, like I never looked at her. Actually, I did look at her chart once. I have to see if I can find it. But yeah, she's a hairstylist, and so it's, now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't even make this association until just now, which is like that Taurus of Fucus kind of a thing. She's full on grounded into style and into beauty. She's a hairstylist in New York City even, and like but then she's also got all that deep Scorpio stuff too, with the astrology and the esoteric and all that.
Yeah. Well, they sit right across from one another, right? That 2-8 axis is no joke. So that's amazing. Yeah. Well, my friend, I want to be respectful of your time, and I so am grateful for excuse me, for coming on here and sharing, your mindset and your intelligence. It's really been a fun ride. I know we got into some really good stuff, and I know my audience is going to appreciate this. I hope we get to do this again, maybe sometime soon. Maybe we can discuss some charts together. That would be kind of cool if you'd be willing to do that with the Mastering the Zodiac.
Yeah, totally.
That'd be kind of fun.
Let me know. I'd love to be back on, and I'm grateful too. I'm really glad there's people like you out there, and it feels like I'm part of a family. We all get to share this and be a part of this, because I think collectively that's what's happening. I think we're transitioning, and yeah, it's just really cool to be a part of it. And I'm really grateful for people like you too, sharing your perspective, which I really value, and I think it's helping the world.
Thank you. So if anybody wants to get a reading from this amazing gentleman right here, is it just go right to Mastering the Zodiac, right? And you can just click on readings. I think you have a category there. That's what I thought. Yeah,
so go back, Mastering the Zodiac, the calculator's there. Check it out, view it visually. It's where everything was when you were born, and then the free report, and then if you want the full run, I'll send that. I guess that link will be part of this video. Yep.
Beautiful, awesome. Well, dude, it's been an honor and a pleasure, man. I mean, when I get to join with somebody like that, man, it's sweeter than you, man. I gotta tell you, I did a reading for a gentleman not too long ago. The guy's a genius, man. I mean, the Jacks are just, you guys are geniuses, as you should be, right? Because that's you're doing your part in the world. So I really, really appreciate your mind and your time. So thank you so very much, Athen. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Logan.
All right, brother.
Thank you.
Much love. Take care.